James was determined to confirm that the abduction of these three individuals was not in vain, especially with Linda's imminent arrival from Uyo, scheduled for an evening flight to Abuja. After successfully abducting Ekene and his female companions, James directed the driver to take them to his confidential residence in Utako, a location known only to his most trusted associates. This choice had emerged as a secondary option in their plans. Aware of the potential risks posed by Bola's potential revelations under police interrogation, James decided to prioritize the handling of these three captives for the time being. He believed he could manage any issues with the law when the time was right. However, something in the information provided by Jackson had caused him to reconsider his approach regarding Bola. James was sure that if Jackson had seen the object and decided it was worth a fortune, then it was worth the risk. But he hadn't understood why the girl would be with an object worth a fortune. He had been more confused when he was informed by Jackson that the girl was guarded by the police. It was this information that had made him feel the object might be important after all. Jackson's judgment carried weight due to their shared history, leading James to believe that the object held significant value. Furthermore, the reactions of Bola's friend and the lady upon seeing it, as noted by Jackson, convinced James that pursuing both the object and its owners was a prudent shift in their mission. James found solace in one fact: the young man who had outsmarted him and his crew was now under their control. His distaste for being outwitted had fueled anger and led to fatal consequences for his own men. Once the Hummer Jeep was driven into the compound, the gate was locked, and the three were quickly ushered into the building. James had purchased the building with the proceeds from a successful drug deal. It had cost him a fortune to acquire and renovate to his liking, but it was worth it. He instructed his associates, Bruno, Jackson, and Ibro, to take the captives into an empty room in the boys' quarters, promising to join them shortly. James first headed to the main building, where he indulged in a bottle of Hennessy to celebrate the success of their mission. Then he proceeded to the BQ. Ekene had already received a couple of slaps from Jackson and Ibro for his earlier clever maneuver that had led to the demise of their friends. James found Sandra very attractive and contemplated pursuing her if the girl from Uyo didn't provide him with the satisfaction he sought. Approaching Angela, James demanded the object. Angela clung tightly to the object, refusing to let go. James attempted to forcefully take it from her, but she resisted. Growing increasingly frustrated, James considered using more aggressive methods, but hesitated. He told himself that she was just a young girl, but he couldn't deny the anger welling up inside him. Witnessing James's transformation from a seemingly genteel man to a menacing figure, Ekene became alarmed. He feared that this man might have been responsible for the deaths of his own men. In a desperate attempt to protect Angela, Ekene rushed to James and offered to negotiate with her to surrender the object peacefully. James responded by slapping Ekene with the back of his right hand, causing him to fall backward. James then began kicking him, causing excruciating pain to Ekene, whose injuries from earlier in the day were still fresh. James finally stopped and gave Ekene just a minute to retrieve the object from Angela or have the girl shot right away. Ekene, bleeding from his lips and forehead, gingerly approached Angela, who was still clutching the object. He called her name and gently raised her head. Angela looked up into Ekene's eyes, and he made a plea for her to relinquish the object. She finally surrendered it to him. Ekene handed the object to James, who eagerly unwrapped it. As soon as he laid eyes on it, he knew Jackson's judgment had been accurate. The object appeared to be pure gold, both in weight and appearance. His anger dissolved, and he found himself puzzled. How had this girl come into possession of such a precious treasure? The girl might be mute, but the older lady and Bola's roommate likely knew something. James smiled and decided to leave the captives alone for a while. He wanted to prepare for Linda's arrival and celebrate the successful mission. He believed there must be more to be discovered, and he intended to find it. He instructed his associates not to tie up the captives, wanting to give Ekene a reason to attempt something daring and give him a good reason to blow his brain up. With a sense of jubilation, James and his associates left the room, closing the door behind them. The prospect of celebrating with their boss was a rare and exciting occasion for them. Sandra carefully supported Ekene, who was clearly in pain after the brutal beating he had received. They remained seated on the floor, Angela sitting beside them with her head bowed. Sandra couldn't help but wonder what was going through Angela's mind. Her day had started with excitement about seeing Saint, but it had quickly turned into a nightmare. These men were undeniably dangerous, evidenced by the cold-blooded murder of the policeman. Sandra wasn't personally scared, having faced worse horrors in her life, but she was deeply concerned about what these men might do to them. She had watched in horror as James had attempted to strangle Angela, and she couldn't fathom why someone would want to harm such a vulnerable girl. The continuous beating Ekene endured was equally distressing. Yet, Sandra felt proud of Ekene for intervening when James had tried to strangle Angela. Now their fate was uncertain, and they had many questions that needed answers. These men had made it clear that they were after Ekene and his friend, but Sandra couldn't understand why they had taken her and Angela as well. They had shown interest in the object Angela possessed, but they hadn't discussed anything with Ekene. Did they know about the gold? If so, how? These questions swirled in Sandra's mind. Ekene in pain looked up at her, and Sandra asked how he was feeling. He expressed regret for involving her in this situation and blamed himself for not anticipating that the men might follow him to the hospital. Sandra reassured him that regret wouldn't change their circumstances and that they needed to focus on finding out what the men wanted. Ekene speculated that the men might have been watching them and saw Angela show him the object, prompting them to take action. Sandra remained calm and fearless, surprising Ekene. He asked her why she was so composed in the face of danger. Sandra then shared her traumatic childhood experience of being kidnapped at the age of 5. She recalled being taken from her happy home and family and the terror she had felt. She believed the kidnappers intended to use her in a ritual. However, they abandoned her after a mysterious encounter with an old man in a hut. She was picked up by a stranger and found herself moving from one foster home to the other after experiencing different sorts of abuse. This traumatic event had shaped her into a strong and fearless person. Ekene asked if this experience had inspired her to start an NGO for women and children. Sandra confirmed that it was indeed a driving force behind her organization. She also spoke of her longing to reunite with her real family, whom she had vague memories of. She wondered if they thought of her and what sort of person they were. Will she one day reunite with them? Were her parents still alive? Ekene was moved by Sandra's story, and he shared his own experience of growing up without a father and initially resenting his mother for it. He realized too late how much she had sacrificed for him. His mother had died just before he graduated from university, leaving him with deep regret. He was sure his real father never bothered to know if he existed, but he couldn't help but wonder what kind of person he was. Sandra commended Ekene for his bravery in risking his life for Angela, seeing it as a testament to his ability to bring happiness to people. She expressed her hope that life would be less cruel to them this time and give them a chance to live. Ekene vowed to do everything he could to ensure their survival, and Sandra promised to play her part in whatever plan he had. Their bond grew stronger as they faced the uncertainty of their situation together.